Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos.
So you were just gifted or you bought yourself that brand new shiny camera. So you unbox your new toy ready to put it to work, only to be so confused and overwhelmed, not even knowing where to start. What do all these buttons even mean anyway? Well, in this video, we are going to be demystifying the camera mode dial. What is the mode dial? What do all the different modes and icons mean on the dial, and how do we use them? So a camera mode dial is one of the most important parts of the camera because it gives you access to different shooting modes. So basically, it's just a dial on a digital cameras or DSLRs where you're able to change the camera's mode, and these different shooting modes is what we're going to be going over in this video so that you know how to use each one. So for most cameras, you'll probably notice your camera mode dial looks something either like the camera on the left or the camera on the right. So starting with the camera on the left, you'll likely notice the letters MASP. These are the standard modes. M stands for manual mode, where you manually adjust all your settings yourself. When I say settings or exposure controls, what I mean is your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. You're able to manually adjust all those settings by yourself whenever you shoot in manual mode. Now, A stands for aperture priority. Aperture priority allows you to adjust the aperture yourself while the camera handles the shutter speed and the ISO. S stands for shutter priority. Shutter priority mode allows you to control the shutter speed while your camera handles the ISO and aperture. P stands for program mode, and program mode is very close to automatic mode, but a little bit different because it gives you partial control over the aperture and shutter speed. And then auto, which obviously stands for automatic, is pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to shoot in automatic, giving the camera free reins to make all the decisions for you automatically, without you having to worry or adjust anything yourself. It's basically like making your DSLR camera operate like a point and shoot camera. The arrow or lightning bolt symbol with a cancel sign through it stands for no flash mode. Once you selected the no flash exposure mode, you can freely take pictures without having to worry about the flash firing off or turning on when you don't want it to. And scene mode contains automated presets for capturing landscapes, portraits, and sports. Portrait mode, which you'll notice is the icon with a side profile of a lady with a hat, is the ideal shooting mode for shooting portraits. And portrait mode allows us to shoot with a wider aperture, which beautifully blurs out the background behind our subject, giving us that much sought after creamy bokeh effect photographers always rave about. Landscape mode, you'll notice, is an icon that looks kind of like mountains. So this shooting mode is ideal for obviously photographing landscapes, and it uses a smaller aperture which creates a deeper depth of field. Now, if you don't already know what depth of field is, be sure to definitely check out one of my previous older videos on an aperture which fully explains aperture and depth of field and how they correlate or their correspondence. So I will link that in a card so you can check that out if you don't already know what depth of field means. Now, kids mode, you might notice an icon where it looks like a little person with their arms up in the air or something like that. So it's supposed to be a child, obviously. So that shooting mode is ideal for capturing fast-moving children, which would require obviously a faster shutter speed. Now that brings us to sports mode or action mode. Now this icon looks like a person running or is in some sort of motion. And this shooting mode is used or best used whenever we are capturing any sort of action or sports. And it also uses a faster shutter speed as well in order to capture motion or movement. So we have macro mode, which will be identified by a oversized or large flower on the dial mode. And this mode is designed to help us better capture our subjects close up. And then lastly, this brings us to the effects mode, which usually offers different digital enhancements, for example, like selective color. So this is getting more into advanced settings or advanced modes on your camera. For those of you who use modes like this definitely would be one of the advanced ones. Now, if we bring up the other photo of the other camera, you'll also notice the abbreviations AV and TV. And believe it or not, you saw these two same exact shooting modes on the previous camera in the other picture of that camera. And AV stands for aperture value, also known as aperture priority. And TV, which stands for time value, also stands for shutter priority. Which makes sense because shutter speed is the length of time the camera's shutter stays open. Now, another shooting mode you notice on this camera is A+, and it's all in green, much like the auto was all in green in the previous camera, and that's because it's the same exact shooting mode. A+ also stands for automatic mode. Now we notice a few added features that was not on the previous camera, and a couple of those features. One is A/depth, which stands for automatic depth of field. Now this shooting mode basically is a fully automatic mode that allows you to pick 2 points in the photograph that you want to be in focus, either in your foreground or your background. And your camera selects the aperture needed to get everything between those 2 points in sharp focus. Now, CA stands for Creative Auto Mode. This auto mode tries to give you more control by asking what type of picture or photograph you want, basically. So the camera mode asks what kind of colors you want, if you want a blurred background or a sharp background, for example. Then the camera chooses the aperture, shutter speed, ISO, white balance, and so on, based on what you told the camera you wanted. So that's basically how that one works. Now you'll also notice there's an icon that has a person with it, with a star next to it. That one is night mode. So this is the shooting mode, which helps us when shooting in low light conditions where there is little to no natural light, and it uses slower shutter speeds in order to do so. And last but not least, you'll notice the icon that looks like a video camera. This video camera symbol obviously is for shooting video. So it's the shooting mode that allows you to shoot video with your camera.
Just covered most of the main basic shooting modes. However, there are 3 others that we did not cover that are not on all cameras. However, depending on your make and model, you may have these other shooting modes. So they are C1 and C2 in bulb mode. So C1 and C2 are great for storing custom user settings. Basically what that means is you're able to store certain settings that you use on your camera rather than having to manually do it yourself. You can go to C1 and C2 and use it for certain scenarios that you want it to save, for storing settings that are good for indoor photography, maybe having a wider aperture, higher ISO. So these are just some examples where you can able to switch to this type of mode, and it'll help you in different scenarios where you need to access new settings quickly. So now let's talk about bulb mode. What is bulb mode? This is basically a mode that allows you to determine your own shutter speed if the camera's slowest shutter speed isn't slow enough for you and you need it to be a little bit slower. So that is the scenario where you would use that. And it's not on all cameras, or it may not even be advertised on all cameras, but some may have that option and some may not. So that's it for this video. I hope you got some value out of it. My personal favorite shooting mode is always manual mode. I love shooting in manual because I find that gives me the most creative control. And once you learn manual mode, you'll really be able to take your photos to the next level. At least that's my opinion. However, if you want to start on one of these other modes, I do recommend, if you're a beginner, possibly starting with program mode, because the fact that it gives you partial control over certain settings but not all of them. And if you need help learning manual mode, I have other videos that talk about how to do so and adjusting your aperture, your shutter speed, your ISO, so definitely go check those out. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe.